Namaste and welcome to Daily News Simplified, the what, why, and how of newspaper reading. Now we would be analyzing the Delhi edition of the Hindu newspaper of 12th of June 2019, and the news that would be covered today is given on the screen, and the timestamp for the same is given in the description and the comment section given below. And so now with this, let us start with the first article. Now we have taken the lead editorial from the editorial page on page 10. Now this editorial talks about the gender dividend, whereby you should see this editorial first from the perspective of GS Paper 1 within the section Society and within the subsection Social Empowerment, Salient Features of Indian Society and the Role of Women. And apart from this, it should also be seen from the perspective of GS Paper 3 within the section Economic Development and within the subsection Indian Economy and Issues Relating to Employment, in particular about gender dividend. And apart from this, it should also be seen from the subsection of inclusive growth, whereby this editorial in particular talks about the employment of women in rural areas. Now apart from this, within your mains examination from 2014 till 2018, several questions have been asked within your GS Paper 1 and GS Paper 3 with regards to women, such as the impact of patriarchy on the position of middle class working women, the reason for adverse sex ratio within the prosperous regions of India, the reason why the sex ratio in tribes in India is better than the sex ratio among the scheduled caste, or the positive and negative effects of globalization on women in India. Similarly, a question has also been asked with regards to on how women's movement within India have not addressed the issues of women of lower social strata. And similarly, a question has also been asked in GS Paper 3 with regards to gender budgeting. Now within that context, let us understand about the gender dividend from the perspective of your mains examination. Now the first thing that you need to understand is what is meant by gender dividend. Now in simplest of terms, gender dividend is basically economic growth potential of India that can be achieved by having more women within the workforce. Now within that context, the author has highlighted various employment trends for women within the editorial. Now the author has based these employment trends based on two surveys, the first being the 61st round of NSSO survey that was conducted for 2004 and 5, and the second being the Periodic Labour Force Survey or the PLFS survey that was recently released. Now the first trend which the author has shown is that 48.5% of rural women were employed in 2004 and 5, but this number has dropped to 23.7% in 2017-18. The second trend which the author has shown is that the worker to population ratio for rural women was about 48.5% in 2004 and 5, but has reduced to 23.7% in 2017-18. Now what this means is, let's say there is a particular rural area in which about 1 lakh people reside. Now out of this 1 lakh people, there might be 50,000 women. Now within this 50,000 women, the total number of women who might be within the working age population, meaning between the age of 15 to 60, might be around 30,000. Now out of this 30,000 women who might be in the working age population, only about 10,000 women might be working. And this is called the worker to population ratio, whereby 10,000 women are currently working as compared to the 30,000 women who are within the working age population. Now it is within that context that the author has said that the working population for rural women has decreased from 2004 and 5 till 2017-18. So let's say if 10,000 women were working in 2004 and 5, now only about 7,000 women are working in 2017 and 18. Now the third trend shown by the author is a comparison between the poor women within the worker to population ratio as compared to the rich women in the worker to population ratio. Now again, let's say there are 1 lakh people within a particular rural area. Out of this, 50% might be women, meaning that there might be 50,000 women within that area. Now out of this, the working age population, meaning the women who might be between the age of 15 to 60, would be around 30,000. Now out of this 30,000 women, there might be some who might be from a rich household within the rural area and some might be from a poor household within the rural area. Now in 2004 and 5, the number of women from a rich household who participated within the workforce was around 31%. And similarly, the number of women from a poor household within a rural area that participated within the workforce was around 30%. Now, according to the author, in 2017 and 18, the number of women from a rich household who participated within the workforce has reduced to 19%. And similarly, the number of women from a poor household who participate within the workforce has reduced to 16%. And therefore, according to the author, the number of women who are participating within the workforce, either from a rich household or a poor household, have reduced in number. Apart from this, what the author has shown is that with regards to literacy, the participation of illiterate women within the workforce has declined from 55% to 29%. And similarly, for rural women who have had secondary education, their work participation also fell from 30% to 15%. The fifth and the last employment trend which the author has shown is that the decline in work for rural women has been the most within the agriculture field. The second field of work in which there has been a decline is in casual wage labor. However, apart from this, what the author has shown is that there has been a 0.7% increase in the regular salaried work for rural women. And similarly, there has been a 0.5% increase for rural women who are working under the Manrega program. Now, these are the main employment trends for women which the author has shown by comparing the 61st NSSO survey, which gives the data for 2004 and 5, with the recently released Periodic Labour Force Survey of 2017-18. Now, it is not required for you to remember all the percentages that has been given, and what is required to be understood is the overall trend of employment for rural women. Whereby the first trend that you need to remember is that the rural women employment has actually decreased overall. Similarly, the second trend that you need to remember is that the worker to population ratio for rural women has also decreased. Whereas the third trend that you need to remember is that the worker to population ratio for rural women, either from the poor household or a rich household, has seen a decrease. And similarly, the labor participation of rural women, either who are illiterate or literate, has also seen a decline. However, one fact that you need to remember is that the number of rural women who are employed as salaried work or who are working under the Manrega program has seen an increase. Whereas it is within the agricultural field itself which has seen the largest decline in the employment of rural women. Now, the main reason as to why it is important to remember the overall trends, because the question has already been asked in your prelims examination of 2018, which had asked the trends from the 17th round of an NSSO survey. Now, after understanding that there has been a general decline in the employment for rural women, let us understand the various causes which have been highlighted by the author for such a decline. Now, the first cause given by the author is that women are unable to find work in a crowded rural labor market. The second cause given by the author is of mechanization and land fragmentation, which has affected rural agriculture. Whereby what has happened is that a large number of agricultural jobs, which is the field of work which has seen the major decline in the employment of rural women, has seen the jobs disappear because of mechanization, whereby most of the jobs which can be undertaken by women or by men are now being undertaken or being done by machines. The third cause given by the author is that many business owners or industries within the rural areas are unwilling to hire women. And the main reason as to why they're unwilling is because of social causes. The fourth reason given by the author is of disguised employment. Now, what happens is that rural women provide help in income earning opportunities, whereby women help their families in fields such as dairy farming. However, what happens is that the work that has been undertaken by women in such activities within their own household are not counted as work. And therefore, what is currently being seen is a large disguised unemployment, whereby rural women might help in income earning work but are not counted as a worker. The fifth and the last cause, which has been highlighted by the author, is that there has been undercounting of women workers within the rural areas by the NSSO and the PLFS survey. Now, the NSSO and the PLFS survey consider a person as a worker if they have engaged in a working activity for 30 days. So, let's say a particular person who might be working under Manrega or within their agriculture field or any other particular job for 30 days, then this person would be considered as being a worker. However, what happens with rural women is that they might work as a Manrega worker for 10 days, they might work within an agriculture field for 15 days, or they might hold up any other casual wage labor for the rest of the 10 days. But what happens because of this is that they are not counted as a worker within the definition of the NSSO and the PLFS survey, whereby they might be working for 30 days, but they have not engaged in a one continuous activity for 30 days. So now these are the five main reasons given by the author as to the cause of decline in employment for rural women. Now, within that context, the author has provided one solution which can be undertaken so as to improve the participation of rural women within the workforce. Now, the solution which has been given by the author is providing safe transportation infrastructure for rural women. Now, according to the author, a safe transportation rural infrastructure would allow the rural women to travel to the cities or nearby villages to find work. Whereby what is currently being seen is that rural men are able to go to nearby villages or the nearby city to undertake work and then come back home. However, because the transportation infrastructure within the rural areas is not safe and not properly built, the rural women are not able to undertake this opportunity. And it is within that context that the author has said that by providing safe transportation infrastructure within the rural areas would give the opportunity for rural women to travel for work. Now, there are two questions for your practice for your mains examination. The first question is, how do you explain the statistics that show a decline in workforce participation of rural women? The second question is, how can recognizing the importance of gender dividend lead to achieving two associated goals, women empowerment and decline in rural distress? Whereby you would be able to answer both of these questions with the help of this editorial and the explanation given in this section. And so now with this, let us move on to the next article. Now we have taken this opinion-based editorial from page 11. Now as you already might be aware of that in the swearing-in ceremony, Prime Minister Narendra Modi has invited the BIMSTEC countries. However, in the 2014 swearing-in ceremony, Prime Minister Narendra Modi had invited the member countries of SAARC. Now, according to the author, what this showcases is a shift in multilateral diplomacy from the SAARC organization to the BIMSTEC organization within India's foreign policy initiative of Neighborhood First. Now, what you need to understand is that for India's foreign policy engagement with any particular region, India interacts in two formats, first being the bilateral engagement and second being the multilateral or institutional engagement. So let's say India's engagement with Southeast Asia, India would have foreign policy engagement with all the countries which are located within the Southeast Asia region, such as Indonesia, Vietnam, Myanmar, and any other country, whereby we would interact with each individual country in a bilateral format. However, apart from this, India would also engage with the Southeast Asian region through institutional or multilateral engagement, whereby with the Southeast Asia region, we interact through the ASEAN organization. Similarly, for the African continent, India interacts bilaterally with each individual country such as Nigeria, South Africa, Tanzania, and others. However, apart from this, India also engages with the African countries through the African Union, whereby India engages with the African Union in a form of multilateral or institutional engagement. Similarly, India also engages with the European countries in a bilateral format, whereby India has direct interactions with France, Germany, Italy, and other countries. However, India also maintains an institutional engagement with the European Union so as to interact with the European region. Now, it is a similar context which is happening in India's neighborhood, whereby India continues to maintain bilateral engagement with almost all the countries within India's neighborhood, such as with Bhutan, Sri Lanka, Maldives, Afghanistan, and others. Similarly, in 2014, the Narendra Modi government decided to have multilateral or institutional engagement with India's neighborhood through the SAARC organization. However, what happened soon afterward is that in 2016, the Uri attack happened, and it was seen that Pakistan became a major roadblock of India's multilateral engagement through the SAARC organization with India's neighborhood. However, the new Narendra Modi government in 2019 has decided that India would continue to maintain bilateral relationship with India's neighborhood countries such as with Bhutan, Nepal, Sri Lanka, and others. But the multilateral or the institutional engagement that India would maintain with its neighborhood would not be SAARC, and it has been changed to the BIMSTEC organization. And therefore, within that regard, the multilateral or the institutional engagement for India's neighborhood first policy would now be done through the BIMSTEC organization. However, apart from this, India would continue to maintain bilateral engagement with all the neighboring countries, whereby what has happened is that the Indian government has already visited three neighboring countries, Bhutan, Maldives, and Sri Lanka. However, its multilateral or institutional engagement would be done through the BIMSTEC organization and not the SAARC organization. Now, apart from this, what is also being seen in both of these engagements is that there has been an exclusion of Pakistan from these foreign policy engagements, whereby Pakistan is not a member of the BIMSTEC organization, and therefore by shifting the multilateral or institutional engagement to BIMSTEC, It allows India to exclude Pakistan from such an engagement. And similarly, India is also currently not engaging in bilateral talks with Pakistan. And therefore, a common point within India's neighborhood first policy is the exclusion of Pakistan, both in the multilateral and the bilateral format. Now, apart from this, the author has highlighted various new elements which have been introduced by the new government in its neighborhood first policy. Wherever the first element which has been highlighted by the author is that India is going to adopt measures to incentivize cooperation in the neighborhood. And according to the author, this incentivization of cooperation in the neighborhood would not be based on reciprocity. Now, this is a similar format to the Gujarat Doctrine, whereby what this means is that India is going to cooperate with its neighboring countries, such as with Bhutan, Nepal, and other countries, whereby this cooperation would not be based on a give and take relationship. The second element which the author has highlighted is that India is going to undertake quick impact projects within its neighborhood so as to provide quick socio-economic benefits. Quick impact projects are basically small projects for small communities. So let's say if there is a particular cluster of villages within Bangladesh who might not have drinking water, then what India is going to do is form a quick impact project within this area and ensure the provision of drinking water to this particular community. Similarly, if there is a particular neighborhood in a neighboring country which does not have schools, then what India is going to do is build a quick infrastructure for those schools and also train the teachers. Whereby such quick impact projects can be undertaken within a framework of 1 to 3 years. And they provide strong socio-economic benefits to the particular community in which such quick impact projects have been undertaken. And apart from this, it also builds up India's goodwill within that particular country and thereby also increases India's soft power within that country. The third element which has been highlighted by the author is that India is going to undertake development projects within its neighboring countries with the help of Japan. Now basically this is a similar concept to a 2 plus 1 mechanism. Now what would happen is that the two would be India and Japan, whereby India and Japan would cooperate in development projects in any neighboring country which would be the plus 1. So let's say if there is a hydroelectric plant which needs to be built in Bhutan or Nepal, then India and Japan can cooperate in such development projects. Now you need to understand that this 2 plus 1 mechanism is also something that India has with China, whereby India and China had decided to undertake development projects within the country of Afghanistan. The fourth element, as we have already understood, is the increased emphasis and priority given to the BIMSTEC organization, whereby there are 3 countries from the SAARC organization which are not members of BIMSTEC. Now these 3 countries are Pakistan, Afghanistan and Maldives. Now Maldives is already an observer country within the BIMSTEC organization, and India has said that Maldives can become a permanent member of the BIMSTEC organization. Apart from this, an importance of BIMSTEC is that it combines India's neighborhood first policy and India's Act East policy, whereby it acts as a bridge between South Asia and Southeast Asia. So now hopefully you've understood the main crux of this editorial, and you should see this article and the explanation given in this section from the perspective of GS Paper 2 within the section International Relations. And so now with this, let us move on to the next article. Now we have taken this article from page 13. Now you need to understand that this news is currently evolving and should be considered as a news in transition. Now what has happened is that the Cabinet Committee on Security has recently taken a decision of setting up the Defense Space Research Agency, or the DSRO. Now the main objective of DSRO would be creating a space warfare weapon systems and technology. Now apart from this, the DSRO would work in close coordination with the tri-services, meaning the Army, the Navy and the Air Force, whereby it would be working in coordination with the tri-services through the Defense Space Agency, whereby the Defense Space Agency is being set up in Bangalore, which would take over the space-related capabilities of the tri-services, meaning the Air Force, the Navy and the Army. Now you need to understand that the decision to form the DSRO has just been taken, and the main features and the main aspects of this organization is yet to come out, and therefore this news should be considered as a news in transition, and let us wait and see as to what would be the main aspects and main features of this organization after such information has been released. But hopefully you've gotten a brief background as to what is the Defense Space Research Agency, or the DSRO. And so now with this, let us move on to the next article. Now we've taken this article from page 9. Now the article in itself is not important for your UPSC examination, but what is required to be understood is what is the dark web. Now the first thing that you need to know is what is the difference between surface web, the deep web and the dark web. Now, what we access through search engines is called the surface web. Now, the surface web includes websites that are easily searchable on Yahoo, Google, Bing, and other search engines, whereby it includes websites such as Wikipedia, the Rouse.is website, and other forms of websites. However, the deep web is the area of the internet which is not accessible through search engines, whereby to get into the deep web, one should know the right internet or the URL address. Now, the deep web would include private databases, the financial record, the government resources, academic information, subscription information, corporate intranets, whereby the information or the websites which are available on the deep web are not merely indexed in the popular search engines and therefore are tougher to find. So, those of you who might have used torrent websites earlier to download music or movies, such torrent websites are part of the deep web. However, you would be able to access these torrent websites within the deep web if you know the right internet address. Whereby, even though difficult, it is easier to access the information or the websites which are located on the deep web, but the information or the websites which are located on the dark web are deliberately hidden. So, those of you who might have heard of the Invisible Internet Project or the Onion Ring or the Tor websites, these are part of the dark web. Now, the second part that you need to understand is how does the dark web work? Now, one of the most popular way to access the dark web is to go through the Onion Ring or the Tor browser. Now, as you might have seen on the surface web, the domain suffix which has been used might be .com, .in and others. While within the dark web, the domain suffix which is used is known as .onion. Now, these .onion websites on the dark web can be accessed through the browser called Tor. Now, what happens is that the Tor browser routes your web page requests through a series of proxy servers which are operated by thousands of volunteers around the globe. And thereby, what it does is that it renders your IP address untraceable. Now, the last aspect that you need to understand about the dark web is why is it used. Now, the main USP of the dark web is that it offers anonymity, whereby the dark web makes it impossible of tracking you down. Therefore, the dark web is currently being used in conducting of illegal trades such as in weapons, drugs, and etc. However, you also need to understand that the dark web is also used by citizens within authoritarian states such as Saudi Arabia, China to communicate with the outside world. And apart from this, what you also need to understand that the dark web is not only used for illegal activities, whereby it also hosts websites that are not illegal in nature, whereby the dark web has its own version of the Facebook, photo sharing websites, and other forms of web pages that are not illegal in nature. However, what is seen is that because of the anonymity or the near impossibility of tracking a person down within the dark web, it is mainly used for illegal purposes. So now hopefully up till here you understood as to what is the dark web. Now you need to understand that these are some straightforward facts about the dark web that you need to remember, especially with regards to your prelims examination. And so now with this, let us move on to the next article. Now we have taken this article from page 13. Now what this article talks about is that the Australian envoy to India has said that the Quadrilateral Group, which was recently formed in 2017 between the United States, Japan, Australia and India, can be used to resolve the regional issues, mainly the regional issues affecting the Indo-Pacific region. Now what we need to understand from this is what is the Quadrilateral Group. Now the Quadrilateral Group or Quad consists of India, Japan, Australia and the United States. And this grouping is considered as an informal grouping, meaning that there is no established institution, structure, common vision that has been given out by this quadrilateral group, wherein this quadrilateral group is considered as a prospective coalition among the four countries, which is India, Japan, Australia, and the United States, wherein it is considered that the future vision of the quadrilateral group would be a political and security perspective in the Indo-Pacific region. Now you have to understand that the quadrilateral group is currently only a proposal, wherein it has not taken form of an official alliance or an organization, and therefore it is considered as an informal grouping. Now the main reason as to why the quadrilateral group is being intended to be formed with a political and security perspective in the Indo-Pacific region is because of the emergence of China, wherein China has emerged as a great power in the Eurasian region. And therefore, there is a growing fear of China's rise as a global power, wherein, for example, India has opposed the China Pakistan Economic Corridor under the Belt Road Initiative. Wherein, apart from this, China has also expanded in the South China Sea and has laid claim to various islands and exclusive maritime zones within the South China Sea, and this is being opposed by various countries of Southeast Asia, such as Philippines, Indonesia, among other. And apart from this, China has various border disputes with its neighbors, such as India and Japan, and therefore there is a consideration among India, Japan, Australia, and the United States to oppose the various initiatives of China in the Indo Pacific region so as to ensure that there is a balance of power in the Indo Pacific region. And it is this fear of the rise of China which has driven India, United States, Japan, and others to form what is called a collective security arrangement, whose purview would be the Indo Pacific region. But you have to understand that the quadrilateral group is currently only a proposal, and we'll have to wait and see as to whether it becomes a collective security arrangement. So now hopefully you have understood as to what is the quadrilateral group and what is the main purpose or the main aim of this informal quadrilateral grouping. When you understand that quadrilateral group is currently only a proposal of a collective security arrangement that might be formed among India, Japan, Australia, and the United States, which might be based on a common vision of a political and security perspective in the Indo Pacific region, wherein the main aim of this quadrilateral grouping would be to balance China's emergence as a great power in the Indo Pacific region and thereby ensure that China's growing unilateralism through the Belt Road Initiative expansion in the South China Sea and among other initiatives do not hamper the national interest of either of the four countries in the quadrilateral grouping. Now, apart from this, what you also need to remember is that the first Quad meet happened in 2017, and after that, several meets of the quadrilateral group has happened in 2018. But these are the main information that you needed to understand about the quadrilateral group. And so now with this, let us move on to the next article. Now we have taken this opinion-based editorial from page 11. Now there's some important points which the author has highlighted within this editorial which needs to be remembered for your prelims and mains examination. Now the first point highlighted by the author is that in 2017, India ratified two conventions of the International Labour Organization. Now, Convention number 138 of the International Labour Organization, which India ratified in 2017, states that the minimum age at which children can start work should not be below the age of compulsory schooling and in any case should not be less than 15 years. However, this Convention number 138 does allow a possible exception for developing countries. Now, Convention number 182 of the International Labour Organization, which India has also ratified in 2017, prohibits hazardous work which is likely to jeopardize the physical, mental, or moral health of a child. And apart from this, it also aims to eliminate the worst form of child labor that children are currently indulging in who are below the age of 18 years. Now, what you need to know is that a question has already been asked in the prelims examination of 2018 with regards to Convention number 138 and 182, whereby the question had asked, ILO Convention 138 and 182 are related to which of the following aspect? Whereby, as you already understand now, that it is related to child labor. Now the next fact which has been highlighted within this editorial is of the Sustainable Target number 8.7. Now the goal number 8 of the Sustainable Development Goals is of decent work and economic growth. Whereby within this goal number 8 of the Sustainable Development Goals, 8.7 refers to taking immediate and effective measures to eradicate forced labor, modern slavery, human trafficking, and secure the prohibition and elimination of the worst forms of child labor. Whereby this elimination of worst forms of child labor includes recruitment and the use as child soldiers. Now the time frame to end child labor is by 2025. Now within that context, the author has said that based on the figures given in the census of 2011, is that India might be unable to end child labor by 2025. Whereby according to the 2011 census, there are about 10.1 million children within India within the age group of 5 to 14. Who are still working as child labor within India. Now, according to the census of 2011, the number of children working as child labor was around 5% in 2001, but which has reduced very slightly to around 3.9% in 2011. And it is within that context that the author is saying is that it might be difficult for India to end child labor by the cutoff year of 2025 and thereby fulfill the goal number 8.7 of the Sustainable Development Goals. Now, it is within that context that the author has highlighted various steps which can be undertaken so as to reduce child labor by 2025. Whereby the first step which has been highlighted by the author is that India should invest in enhancing its body of knowledge on child labor, especially invest in finding and providing quantitative information on the number of child labor within India. Now, what the author is trying to mean is that it is still not clear in how many children are working as labor within India. And similarly, the district wise ratio and the state wise ratio is currently not acceptable or not proper with regards to child labor. And it is within that regard that quantitative information with regards to child labor needs to be improved within India. The second point highlighted by the author is that there are several factors which push children into being a child labor. And according to the author, the government should identify the factors which push children into labor market. And these identification of factors should be based on demography, states, region, and other various aspects. The third and the final step which the author has highlighted through which India can end child labor is that the fight against child labor is the responsibility of all. Whereby, according to the author, it is not just the responsibility of the government to end child labor, whereby we as citizens of India should also do our part in ensuring that child labor is not used in any form of businesses that we interact with. Whereby the society at large should avoid employing children to clean their houses, avoid shops or food places in which children are employed, and similarly, other steps can be undertaken by the Indian society to fight against child labor. Now, these are the four main points that you needed to understand from this editorial with regards to child labor. And so, now with this, let us move on to the next section. Now, I've taken this data point from page 11. Now, what this data point shows are various observations from the PLFS report or the Periodic Labor Force Survey report of 2017-18. Now, what you need to do is pause this video and go through the various observations which has been highlighted within this data point. And after that, what we're going to do is understand the various observations from this data point through questions for practice. Now, hopefully you've gone through the various observations which has been given in the data point. Now, based on those observations, there are two questions for your practice. And what you need to do is pause this video, solve both of these questions, and wait for 5 seconds for the correct answer. Now, the correct answer to question number 1 is D, 3 only. Whereby with regards to statement number 1, there is no pay parity among men and women in either salary jobs or in casual labor. Whereby currently in India, it is the men who earn more than women, especially within casual labor, wherein the average wage of men is 1.5 times of that of women. Now with regards to statement number 2, it is not the northeastern states that are an exception with higher women's monthly earnings as compared to the men, whereby it is the state of Uttar Pradesh, which has been cited as an exception in the PLFS report, in which the women have a higher monthly earnings as compared to the men. However, you have to understand that this exception for Uttar Pradesh is only for salaried jobs. Whereas it is statement number 3, which is the correct one, whereby the female workforce participation is very low as compared to the male workforce participation, whereby the female workforce participation is around 21%, while the male workforce participation is around 72%. Now with regards to question number 2, the correct answer is D, 1, 2 and 3. Whereby with regards to statement number 1, the definition of gender gap in the PLFS report basically means the difference between the male and the female working population in percentage terms. While with regards to statement number 2 and 3, Assam and Delhi have a higher gender gap as compared to the average in India, and similarly the state of Gujarat has a higher gender gap as compared to the states of Tamil Nadu and Kerala. And therefore the correct answer to question number 2 is D, 1, 2 and 3. Now there are 2 more questions for your practice, and as you already understand, pause this video, solve both of these questions, and wait for 5 seconds for the correct answer. Now the correct answer to question number 3 is B, 1, 3 and 4, whereby the Prime Minister of India, Minister of Finance and Corporate Affairs and the Minister of External Affairs are members of the Cabinet Committee on Security. Whereby recently the Cabinet Committee on Security has been formed by the new government which has been elected, whereby it includes the Prime Minister, the Minister of Defence, the Minister of Home Affairs, the Minister of Finance and Corporate Affairs and the Minister of External Affairs. Now the correct answer to question number 4 is D, 3 only, whereby statement number 1 is wrong, whereby the dark web also hosts internet content which is legal in nature. Now with regards to statement number 2, it is the deep web which holds 90% of the internet content. And with regards to statement number 3, the deep web does include intranet hosted by firms and by government services. And therefore the correct answer to question number 4 is D, 3 only. And now with this we come to an end in the analysis of today's newspaper. Now we move on to the question for today.